Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. That's Christina Carpenter on the screen, and the only thing I've ever seen her in is Buffy and a handful of episodes of Angel. Didn't care much for Angel, as it was a tangent to Buffy, and the storyline just really didn't feel the same as it did in Buffy. They were going to make a reboot of Buffy, but that got pulled and it's not going to happen, which is just as well, as she's now 50 years old and the rest of the cast are naturally all older than it was. Buffy and Angel were products of their era, and they should be in the past. It wouldn't feel the same at all. And the obvious question, would I date Christina if I was super wealthy and our orbits crossed? Probably not. She's a divorcee now, and she's got a son from her ex-husband. Plus, she's about an inch taller, maybe 2 inches taller than me, and that's without wearing heels. And pictures of her husband show he's well over 6 foot. So Christina there, like the majority of women in this world, prefer guys which are much taller than her. Though as before, as I said, it would be interesting to see what she looks like in real life, but as for dating and romantic relationships, even if we got on, then nah. Never mind. What you never had, you'll never miss. And what you haven't missed as you get older, you just find you can do without. So anyway, enough about Christina. Over the weekend I had a look at a Manscaped. Is it Manscaped, the YouTube channel, about the clips of women complaining about not dating. So I had a look around to see what I could find to see how it's affecting now in May 2026. I didn't really find much, but I found something just as interesting. And the first is this. As you can see, it's NPR. I don't know what that stands for. And as you can see, the title, Heritage Foundation, says declining marriage rates pose a threat to society. This was done on January 16th this year, and it's an interview. The Heritage Foundation argues the report declining declining marriage rates pose a threat to society. NPR discusses the findings with Jennifer Squiba of the Population Research Bureau in America. And this is a transcript from the interview. Marriage and birth rates are both declining in America, and there amounts to a crisis, at least according to the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. So it's obviously getting a official concern in Washington, created in 2025, so that it's really started to gain momentum. Roger Severino is the foundation's vice president of economic and domestic policy. He says it's been a slow motion catastrophe for America, where people are not getting married and not having children anywhere near the healthy level we need for a fully flourishing society. And a new report, the foundation calls for tax incentives, welfare reforms, even a publicly funded marriage boot camp. Good luck with that. The Heritage Foundation usually advocates for a smaller government. Yep, Thomas Jefferson said that. In case Severino says government has a role to play. No, it doesn't. We have to stop penalising marriage in our welfare state, in our tax programs. When you get the government to remove obstacles to family formation, that's when and then what's innovative with most recent proposals, you get the government off the sidelines and actually get active support with child credits and child care credits tied to marriage. And then it goes on in a similar vein. No mention at all of women being too picky. And then about the marriage and the interview. So looking further, I found this. This is the Heritage Foundation. This was done on January the 29th, about 12 days after this. No marriage, no babies, no future. America's going from birth to death. and at least in that family it's a white family, and no the mixed race with what do you call them, African children. We make no apology for wanting to pursue young Americans to marry homes, next generation, find deep fulfillment in family life. Kind of disagree with that. And then, key takeaway, the collapse of marriage and future family represent the greatest threat to our great nation's future. Yeah, but that's been going on since second, third and fourth wave feminism. America is rooted in its people, yeah, as is every country. And it cannot be sustained if Americans themselves do not marry. Tell that to the feminists. Form families and raise children. Tell that to the feminists. We have done watching all our kids fall further behind, our families struggle and our social pillars crumble, and we are calling for action that meets the moment. And then it says a new report on the Congressional Budget Office shows that absent immigration, America's population will begin to shrink by 2030. So the American Congress is obviously seriously worried about the decline of birth rate and the fall of marriage, but the American Congress is scared to death of feminism, so there's nothing going to be doing about it, and the American Congress probably thinks disproportionately some men for refusing to get married. In other words, the Congress is against marriage and the Congress is against the MGTOW. Men got in their own wallet. And he says, as we approach the 250th anniversary of America's founding, this projection underscores the hard truth the collapse of marriage and family life represents the gravest threat to our great nation's future. Well, you can blame that on feminism and I don't need no man, and women being too picky and only wanting the top 10 and 1% of men, and all the other men in America are just invisible to them. And it says this is why the Heritage Foundation was released, the first in a series of special reports on saving America by saving the family. Let's have a look what that brings up. And nope. Fox News, Heritage Foundation warns America dangerously close to family breakdown, point of no return. This was done January the 10th. The conservative think tank said US policy should encourage and protect marriage and family formation, not mere fertility. And then it's a report about it. Yada yada yada. Who the hell's he? That's the president, founder of it. Anyway, you can read that yourself when you click on the link. It says the central argument is straightforward. Our country cannot afford to continue ignoring declining marriage and birth rates as lawmakers both left and the right have done for decades. The decision ranges from eliminating all marriage penalties, embedded in welfare programs and new tax credits for married families, to offering public honours to couples for every decade they remain married. But first of all, you got to get married, and before you get married, you got to date and see that the woman that you're dating is suitable and is wife material. But women don't want to date anymore. They only want to date if you're 6 foot tall, 6-figure salary, and a six-pack, and all the rest of it. And it says these proposals reflect a blend of long-standing conservative priorities and new ideas animated in a shared belief that strong American families were at the heart of the nation in 1776, of course, and remained essential for its future, of course. They are not offered the final word, but at the beginning of a long overdue national conversation about how to halt America's demographic and social collapse. Well, you can get women to stop being so damn picky for a start. And it says, unfortunately, they're both a radical left and libertarian right who are rigidly and ideologically opposed to our key ideas of supporting married families. And it says, critics on the left are opposed to abortion and support of married parents. who prefer to provide home child care, usually through the mother, amount to patriarchal assault on women's autonomy and reproductive freedom, meanwhile critics of the libertarian right contend that government has no business trying to incentivize decisions related to family structure. So we've got the usual bollocks from the left, and we've got a modicum of common sense from the right. And then few dispute that marriage rates are falling, traditional families are weakening, or that the nation stands on a demographic precipice. Of course, MGTOW has been saying that since at least 2000. What is striking is how our critics echo each other in saying the government should not be doing anything proactive about it. True, the government should keep its nose out of family life, but women, again, are the ones who are getting too picky. The social media has enforced that, and then problem with the traditional family continue to disappear. We will eventually lose America itself. Of course you will. And then the American rooted in people culture and all the rest of this thing. And if you want, you can get a guide to the American Constitution, which I doubt Americans have actually read. But anyway, that's the American Heritage Foundation. Dipping further into American politics, I found this: Independent Woman. Conservative value single women. The Republican policy must show it. It says conservatives do not want to be seen as valuing only married mothers or only women as mothers. Ours is a movement that welcomes, it's a movement, not a political party, welcomes single women, widows, lesbians, divorcees, working moms, any woman. And written by a woman naturally. See what she is. That's her that wrote it. Wonder if she's married. She's president of Independent Woman, a vice president of Independent Woman's Voice, a member of Independent Women's Network. Worked in policy area for 25 years, career woman, author of Politically Incorrect Guide to Women's Sex and Feminism. Give you an idea where she's leaning. But anyway, she goes on, since Donald Trump's victory in 24, conservative leaders have been particularly vocal in celebrating the central role of family life. From Elon Musk's son sitting in the President's Oval Office to Vance holding his sleeping daughter while boarding Air Force One. Well, if it's a daughter's a young child and she's asleep, then naturally his father is carrying her. The administration being normalising the pretense of young children in a natural part of life. This is a welcome trend, likely accelerate to second family welcomes their fourth child this summer. But then we go. For decades, conservatives and some liberals, like those in the Brookings Institute, have worked to build awareness of how getting married before having children, along with graduating high school and getting a job, provides the foundation of avoiding poverty and achieving long-term success. Of course, that's the basis of America from its foundation to the 1950s and early 1960s. And then giving our marriage benefits both men and women who are healthier, wealthier, and report higher levels of happiness than their single counterparts. That's debatable. On some of the comments on the YouTube channels, guys who are now divorced have been happier and more at peace than they were when they were married. And it says, then we get the political slant, but Republicans risk deepening the gender gap, particularly among unmarried women, by advancing proposals that explicitly privilege marriage through federal tax and benefit structures. In other words, it's going against what this article said. And hitting single women with tax penalties won't help conservatives. Heritage Foundation recently published a report reviving the American family. As I said, it's going against whatever this article said. This disastrous public policy approach contributed to the decades-long breakdown of healthy family formation, contributing to generational poverty and dysfunction. Then why are so many guys in American prisons a result of single-parent households? And then policy changes to root out bias against marriage are common sense, yet the Heritage Report goes further, calling for the use of government policy and federal tax dollars explicitly to encourage people to get married, particularly to marry young. And then, what about those who don't marry or marry after 30? They would be hit with a tax penalty of 20% for any money taken out before they reach the age of 59.5. And then conservative policies are not pro-women married or not, and yada yada yada, yada yada yada. The conservatives do not want to be seen as valuing only married mothers or only women as mothers. Ours is a movement that welcomes single women, widows, lesbians, divorcees, working moms, that means single moms, any woman, as long as they share the core conservative belief that personal responsibility, well, that means female accountability, which is kryptonite to them. Limited government and free markets are the foundation of a flourishing country. Then why are so many women not wanting to get married, except if you're a 1% or 10% guy? Now that's the over in America. Over here in Britain, I found this, Cosmopolitan. It said, as you know, why are more women choosing to say single? That was what was covering on the Manscaped, the videos, big tales I saw over the weekend. These days it's increasingly common for women to be single by choice when then the society views us as desperate. Well, if you're not desperate, then why are you complaining on TikTok? This was done on March 6th. This was done February the 24th. And it's a long piece, I'm not going to go through it all. And said, don't worry, women like you don't get left on the shelf. And then the introduction, if I just shared the judgmental comments from older relatives, it just hadn't occurred to me that someone my own age would consider me a dusty relic sitting on a shelf. No, you're a spinster, waiting to be rescued from neglect and loneliness. This spinster's been single for 15 years. It's my choice to live this way. Fair enough. I thought she saw me as myself, a confident, happy woman, strong, independent woman who don't need no man, who's thriving alone. I'm someone who takes spontaneous solo trips in far-flung places, and yada yada yada. That's all very well if you're young, fit and healthy and you've got a decent income, but what happens when you start getting old and you can't do these things? She says, I have zero responsibilities and no one to please but myself. Of course, you're single. I revel in this freedom. A strong, independent woman. A joy comes from the fact I have decentered romantic relationships from my life. In other words, she's racking up a body count. And I'm far from alone. And then about Morgan Stanley predicting. And then we come to this daft bint called Meghan McKay. She's used a sperm donor to become a mother. She's pregnant at 26 years old. She's 14 weeks pregnant. And this is in Britain. And beginning at being 20s, no, she's younger than a lot of women who opted for solo motherhood. And it was like a dating app. She didn't take a British guy, so she could be giving birth to a mixed race baby, so she'd have a what does Sandman call it? African. And then being browsed through the profile from around the world, she felt she was swiping on a dating app, which just shows how irresponsible she is. She did 3 UI treatments, it didn't work. Before moving to IVF, how did she pay for it? After the embryo transfer was told to allow 12 days, but she couldn't wait, which means she's impulsive. And then the Megan's experience is proof that are not missing if you choose to pass from diverges from what's considered the norm. The alphabet, people, single parents, in other words, single mothers, adoptive parents, foster families, and others. Happiness doesn't have to follow the traditional heteromotive route. It's something we can shape for ourselves. In other words, selfish people who are raised in other people's genes. And then we move over to America. Dr. Bella DiPaolo, she's in California, no surprises there. She's single, does what she wants, yada 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 yada. And then on and on and on. This is a woman's publication, so it gives you an idea the slant that it's on. I decided I wanted genuine, safe relationships to turn to when I struggle with things in my life. She says Sophie, now 25, has a housemate and they pay rent for their accommodation, so she's probably a lesbian. They frequently walk over to see fellow community members who live a few houses away. She's in a commune. We have regular meals together and get to bring up issues and interests and to get great advice and support amongst each other. In other words, she's a dippy hippie type. And then this growing way of living in America, carving out new ways single women can foster connection without going down the traditional route. Take the example set by author Janet Hogarth, who 1 year into single motherhood, single mother, where's the father, decided to create a mommune of single moms commute with 2 other single moms together under one roof. Janet and her friends Vicky and Nicola, probably lesbians, become a family along with 6 collective kids. They say it takes a village, so the same women are building their own from the ground up, literally. Yeah. I give it 10 years, then it just implode. And then more yada yada. Leftover women. And staying single doesn't mean you're left over on a dusty shelf. No, you're a spinster. Far from it, the idea of decentering relationships applies to you. An enriching and liberating life awaits. Yeah, but life has a habit of tripping you up when you think everything's going smoothly. Anyway, that's Cosmopolitan. I've also found this, the Good Men Project, the conversation no one else is saying. Nearly 50% of women will be single by 2035, so they've stretched it out another 5 years. Have people got so used to autonomy and life exactly the way they want it that relationships are less appealing? Yes. And this is a transcript of this article, so I won't go through it, but if you just click on that, all what's written here is what's in the article. The definitely more provocative, they say women are higher spending consumers, so maybe excuse me again. Higher spending consumers, so maybe they're interested in what women are going to spend their money on in the future. And they said, let's see how it sounds if you say men. By 2035, nearly 50% of men will be single. Yeah. How does that sound? Does it sound as impractical? Does it? People just go, well, that makes sense. It's a very depressing statistic, I think. No, it's not. Guys have just decided that it's not worth the effort. And reaction online, when I found it really interesting, when I saw this statistic on Instagram, clicked on the comment section. I'm not kidding when I said the thousands of comments, I couldn't find a single one saying this is depressing. I'd say 90% of the comments were from women and 10% from men. All the comments I saw from women or I read were like, thank God, enough of men. Yeah, that sounds like a peaceful life. That's about right. So that just gives you an idea of the hostility women have towards men. And then it was really interesting. I didn't relate to that. I saw that if I saw that statistic, it would make me feel sad and anxious. It it wouldn't make me go, well, yeah, so I was actually quite surprised. I wasn't. The study talked about women aged 25 to 44, approaching the wall and post-wall, what one would expect of prime coupling years. No, they're not. They're approaching the wall and post-wall. It's not like I just came out of a 30-year marriage, I'm 60, and I'm never doing that again. It's people in the years where they'd be looking for someone. No, by 25 you should be settled into a marriage. By 44 you should be expecting grandchildren. They hear people in these years saying thank God and celebrating the fact. That's interesting. And then rebellion and disillusionment, getting set in our ways. Defence mechanism, have the rules changed, economic pressure, the stock has risen, yada yada yada. As I said, just a transcript of that article. To finish this off, because I'm probably get over 20 minutes now, I found this Medium. Project 2025 to anyone not married with children. Screw you. The Trump administration, so she's a Democrat voter. Let's see what about her. America's foremost thinker and writer, well that's not saying much, on single experience according to The Atlantic. Single at Heart book is a gold medal winner. Yeah, but I've never even heard of Bella DiPaolo. So she's only famous in America, and outside of America she's a complete unknown. Anyway, the Trump administration plans for nuclear family supremacy. So she's a left-winging American. And if you drop down, Project 25, the blueprint of many of the policies and goals of the current Trump administration, is a document of nearly 900 pages. You can put that document in just 9 pages. The White House, in its complement, Republican-led Congress, have been ploughing its way through the Project 25 agenda on immigration, border security, the economic trade, environment, foreign policy and defence, but it has not yet fully taken on one of the key goals, promoting stable and flourishing married families. Here's what we're in for once they do. But it's not touched on why women are so picky when it comes to choosing men to be a future husband and father of their children. The regressive and restrictive heterosexual marriage and nuclear family supremacy. So Bella there is a leftish liberal who doesn't like the fact of heterosexuality. When Project 25 declares that it wants to promote married families, it means just one kind of married family: married mother, married farmer, and their children. Yes. Considered the foundation of a well-ordered nation and health society. Yes. And here's her real feelings. Alphabets, they want that repealed. Helping single mothers, no more of that either. Well, single mothers should be more picky about who they have sex with. Also, nothing that could be considered as a marriage penalty. Single mothers, absent fathers and their children come in for quite a lot of stereotyping, stigmatizing. And then you got to create an account to read the rest of the story. Bugger that. But Heritage Foundation is getting seriously concerned about the decline in birth rate in America. The independent women have stuck their oar in, but they're more leaning to the left. Over here in Britain we got some daft bints using sperm donors to raise a family, but who's going to pay for the child once it gets growing up, because she'd be a single parent? Daddy government. And we got the nearly 50% of women will be single by 2035, which is 2026, 9 years from now. They've extended it a bit. And daft bints like this don't like the idea of heterosexual marriage and all the rest. She's more for the left-wing nut jobs and the alphabets having children. So it's a case of The American society is getting seriously worried about the condition, but they're not going to do anything really about it because they're scared of the women voting them out of office and the feminists getting up in arms against them. So these interesting times coming to America, and the closer we get to 2035, the more interesting we get. Plus we've got a major recession and maybe a depression between now and then, with Trump's blundering into a stupid war that he hasn't got any idea to get out of. So I think I'm on the 20 minutes now, maybe way beyond that. You know the routine, people. Like, dislike, comment, subscribe. It's completely up to you. But America is in for hard times, and they say hard times produce strong men, and we're going to have to see what happens, because all these I don't need no men feminists, they're going to get it bad, and they ain't going to be able to do anything without a man at the side. Right, that's it from this week. I'll try and find something more on this for next week, but for now, that's it from me. Bye-bye.